Good afternoon, my friends. It's Erev Shabbat. We're back in our shul, and it's a very different looking shul. For the first time in over 3 months, the government has given us permission to come out of semi-lockdown and to actually come back to our shuls. Our homes have been our shuls for the last 3 months, but now with the government's permission and enforcing social distancing and all sorts of other measures, we're allowed to turn our shul back into our home. And we're deeply appreciative of the executive board and everyone that's been involved to make this a reality. It's not the normal shul that we know, but at the very least we can have a micro community to be able to go ahead and really engage once again in meaningful tefillah and meaningful prayer. Nothing happens by chance. The government probably didn't look at the weekly parsha when they decided on the date of the 4th of July, which is tomorrow Shabbat. They probably also didn't realize that we live in a diaspora and therefore we're not always in sync with the parashiyot of the land of Israel. This week they're one parasha ahead. This week, however, we read the parashiyot of Balak and Chukat and Balak. The story of Balak begins, as we all know, with the famous king of Balak who understood that the Jewish people, who had been victorious in fighting the two great nations of Og and Sichon, were making their way to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel. He was concerned for his empire, but he suddenly realized that the power of the Jewish people does not lie in their ability to have mighty armies, but that the power of the Jewish people is in their mouths, where they are able to connect and create meaningful relationships through tefillah, through prayer with their Almighty Hashem. So he employs Bilam. Bilam, we are told, was the greatest of all the Gentile prophets, to come and curse the Jewish people. Bilam comes even though he knows God doesn't allow it, and he tries once and he tries second time, but each time only blessings come out. Each time he invokes sacrifices and builds altars, but he's not successful. The third time he moves up to a different vantage point. And as he looks out upon the Jewish camps, he declares the words which should have come out in a curse, but instead come out in a blessing. Words that the Jewish people for thousands of years have been saying as they enter their synagogues, as they enter their batei kenesiot, as they enter their shuls. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Israel. How good are your tents, O Israel? Mishkenotecha, and your sanctuaries, the Jewish people. What is this referring to? What are these tents? So Ramosha Feinstein, the famous Ramosha Feinstein, tells us that we have a contradiction. On the one hand, the Talmud tells us in Bava Batra, I believe is the source, that the tents refer to the Jewish home. And from his vantage point, what he saw was something incredible. That each house was offset, the doorway was offset the other doorway, promoting this idea of modesty and serenity and peace in the Jewish home. He was praising the Jewish home. But there is another source in the Talmud of Sanhedrin. And Rabbi Yossi comes along and says, from the blessing of Bilam, we can understand what he wanted to do. His intent was to curse the Jewish people's shuls. And he was saying, you don't need the shuls. You don't need the houses of study. So which is it? Is it a praise of the Jewish home? Or is it in fact what he was trying to do, to put down and denigrate the idea of a Jewish house of worship, of a shul, of a house of study? Ramosha Feinstein in his genius says, they're actually one and the same. Bilam's intent over here was not only to praise the Jewish home, but was to downsize the idea of why we need the shul. He turned to the Jewish people and says, you have the home. Let your home be the place where you pray. Let the home be the place where you study. You don't need Jewish schools. You don't need a Jewish shul. Stay at home. But his intent was to take that vibrancy of the Jewish people and minimize it. To put the Jewish people on a vine, so to speak, and to let them say, wither away for all time. Ramosha Feinstein says, both are equally important. And this is not a new idea. In the Soviet Union and the former Russia, when communism was alive, all forms of Jewish outreach and Jewish worship and Jewish identity were outlawed. If you were caught praying in a shul, you'd be sent to Siberia for years. Similarly, if you were teaching anything Jewish. This week's parsha is telling us that both the Jewish home and also the concept of a shul, are both equally important. We have the opportunity now with the government's blessing to come back, albeit in a small way. It's baby steps. It won't be the same, but at the same time, we have the ability for the first time in 3 months to daven with a minyan, to answer Kaddish. Let us heed the message of this week's parasha and its uncanny timing, to understand what an incredible blessing it is to be able to come to Bet Knesset, to be able to pray and connect with our Creator, and understand how beautiful and how fantastic it is to have the central hub of Jewish life, the Bet Knesset, back in our lives, albeit in a small way. Gam ze yavol, please God, this should pass as well. But I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and have a healthy and a good week.